So with the Promised Neverland kind of moving into the finale of its story and kind of bunkering down on the current situation, I really wanted to touch on a subject or a topic that kind of revolves around the actual ending, like the finale of what's going to happen. How does everything kind of reach its conclusion? For me, the Promised Neverland has been quite an incredible journey. It's a rather short story, at least that's kind of what it's building up to be, most likely being less than 200 chapters. This is a pretty good thing in my books. I love a story that is kind of just straight to the point and cutthroat. It doesn't necessarily pander to its audience. It doesn't try to be longer than it originally set out to be, and it tells, the respective narrative that the authors originally intended. With how kind of everything's building up now regarding Musica, which I believe her name is actually pronounced Musica, or at least it's spelt with a J and not an actual S. I'm just gonna call it Musica. There is some things that I feel like would be some very controversial ending points that I really want to touch on. So far, something that I really want to make clear is Emma's character and kind of her portrayal throughout the entirety of the story. So far, Emma has been kind of the focus point of everything. Even though there is technically three main characters, Ray, Emma, and Norman, Emma's perception and the perspective we see as readers kind of revolves around Emma. And she's been making all the tough decisions since day one, obviously with the help and enhancement from everyone kind of surrounding her, but it still kind of falls on her. Ultimately, all the characters up to this point, other than Emma, have actually made really big sacrifices. And what I mean by this is Norman and Ray. Both characters have made pretty substantial sacrifices to, whether they be kind of sacrificial or selfish in nature, to benefit Emma and the rest of the family or the rest of the group. Emma has not done this, at least not to the extent of both of these characters. And with kind of the final goal in sight, this led me to a conclusion that sounded rather interesting. Obviously, the semantics of it is a little bit odd because we don't really know how it would work, but we'll see. So first and foremost, the idea kind of centers around Musica and her importance obviously coming into the final arc. Musica, if you did not know, is a demon that does not actually have to eat humans to survive and retain her form. I found this very interesting since day one. When we kind of saw Musica for the first time, and even Lewis for an example, these demons are highly sophisticated and extremely advanced. Musica is probably the best interpretation I can give for a demon that is most likely more human than demon. She has a extremely far-fetched humanoid form, meaning that she has human limbs. Literally 90% of her body is human, and the other 10% is that very small portion of demon. We then ultimately find out that she comes from a very specific blood Maiden clan, which obviously her blood allows other demons and herself to not actually have to eat humans to retain their intelligence or that form. Now that obviously brings in a pretty big stipulation for the story, right? It's going to be the primary focus point. However, there's a kind of a promise that has to be rewritten, which is what Emma is trying to do. On one hand, you have Norman, who's trying to destroy all the demons, including the Blood Maiden clan. Then you also have Emma, whose plan is to kind of make a deal with the demons, like previously before, and rewrite everything so humans can actually coexist to a certain extent with demons that want to cooperate. Now, obviously, there is a massive hierarchy within these demons. There's so many different royal families, and there's like a certain god that they kind of worship. Everything kind of revolves around these demons being greedy and self-centered and really kind of pushing that nobility ranking to its limits. Certain noble families have access to Blood Maiden demons and their blood to allow them to not kind of disintegrate back into a non-humanoid form or a non-intelligent form. This is vitally important to how this goes, because if Emma, for the most part, makes a deal, right? If she is trying to rewrite and make a deal with a specific demon, whether it be this little god demon that we've seen that was riding a dragon, whether it's Musica or someone else entirely, how does this result and the effect of it actually ripple onto the noble families? How are they going to take it? Probably not lightly. For this to kind of actually be a legitimate thing, for this promise to actually go down, there has to be an equal sacrifice. And I say sacrifice like it's kind of a bad thing, but it's more like a selfish desire. And this kind of wraps into perfectly what Emma's character is all about. Doing everything in her willpower for everyone else. She always puts everyone else first, and that's kind of what makes her a very noble character in that regard, a very benevolent character. She does not realistically care about herself, but more so the people around her, and she wants to better the people around her, including Ray, Norman, and even the demons. She's very stubborn in that aspect, and I believe this will play into the quote-unquote promise rather heavily. I don't know how this would be possible, but at this point, with the demons actually creating humans and turning them into very powerful humans, and some even transformed into low-pity demons, basically, I wouldn't be surprised if it's possible for humans to specifically turn fully into demons. And I mean that in a more kind of ancestral, spiritual way, not the scientific way that the demons were originally doing, which I do think would play into part that the demons are trying to obviously create a artificial food source, but also maybe trying to recreate the Blood Maiden clan by creating humans and using their blood as kind of like a starting point to recreate the Blood Maiden curse, or their blood specifically, so they could continue living without actually needing to eat humans. Even though they can and they want to, by creating it specifically, they don't actually have to, and they don't have to be worried about a food supply. This kind of all connects to the idea that for Emma to actually create an agreement or a new promise, right? She gets to this point with Ray, there's gonna have to be a massive sacrifice, and I think that sacrifice would be Emma in turn basically sacrificing herself, not in the form of death, but in the form of turning her into a demon, very similar to Musica, right? A very humanoid demon that is basically 90% human and that little 10% fraction of a demon. I think this would be a very easy sacrifice to do for Emma, something that she most likely would jump at the opportunity to do. If she was given the opportunity to save everyone and stop all these demons and, you know, create this new promise that's going to help demons and humans coexist from now on to a certain extent, and the only thing that she would have to do is for her to be transformed into a demon, I think she would 100% take it, no questions asked. On top of that layer, it also brings up another idea that, for me, it's kind of against the story grain, obviously having a self-sacrificial ending like that, but at the same time, I think it works perfectly with what the story is trying to portray, especially with Emma's character. She's vitally important, and I don't think this promise or this agreement is going to go down as smoothly as she actually thinks. I do think there has to be equal trading here. Just imagine an ending where these demons substantially coexist with humans. They no longer have to eat humans to survive. Musica has kind of made sure of that, but the result is Emma being a demon, and you can imagine a final panel or the final couple of chapters with Emma actually returning to the group as a demon. Their reaction, I think, would be out of this world. The sacrifice that she had to make was completely worth it and perfectly sits within her character. Is this a possibility? I think so. We're kind of on the borderline realm of humans turning into demons to a certain extent. There's obviously limitations and borderlines, but we're entering a world of mystical elements, basically. Tiny demon baby that Emma's seen in like a vision was very godly, if you will. Lewis is kind of like the only demon that we've seen so far that kind of transcends the normal demon hierarchy with the abilities, the crazy abilities that he had. And then we have Musica, who is more human than actual demon, and we find out she's from a specific clan, right? A clan that doesn't actually have to eat humans to survive. What if originally that clan, that Blood Maiden clan, was humans to begin with, that were slowly transformed into demons, but because they were human originally that transformed into demons, that's the reason why they didn't have to continue eating humans. Because the whole kind of anatomy of a demon is that they continue to eat the things and they gain attributes from those things, they gain intelligence, and they have to continue eating. There's nothing that's really been talked about in terms of the Blood Maiden clan. Obviously it's still a mystery in terms of why they don't have to continue eating to gain intelligence or to keep that form that they're currently in. The only thing that I can come to is that they were human to begin with, transformed into a demon, hence why Musica has such a humanoid form to that extent. Like the first time you see her, you wouldn't be surprised if she was just wearing some demon stuff on top of her to make her fit in and survive in the wild or something. Little do we know she was the most important character this entire time. Regardless, I think Musica and Emma have something very close in common, and if Musica is kind of like the key to all of this and Emma turning into a demon is going to save everyone, I think that would be a very sacrificial ending, but on a very good note. something that's worth sacrificing yourself for, the betterment of the future, the betterment of your family and friends without utter destruction, something that Emma is trying to avoid at all costs. I don't know if it's possible, and obviously the upcoming chapters are going to kind of prove that to be a little bit more difficult than actually intended, but with the nobility coming out to play and we're finding more about them and Lewis and his family, the war is creeping ever so closer with Norman and what he's trying to do. I don't know what type of promise Emma can make, but I do believe whatever she does within that promise, there has to be something of equal sacrifice. A promise for a promise. It's not just one-sided. She has to give something to get something in return. And I think that fits the narrative of the story perfectly and her character. So with that being said, that is basically it. Let me know how you guys feel about Emma potentially turning into a demon. I know it seems a little bit far-fetched, but at this point, anything's kind of possible, and I feel like it's the only option that we haven't really explored that would fit Emma as a character perfectly, and it'd be extremely emotional with everyone's kind of reunion with her. Everyone's so scared of demons right now. Everyone doesn't want to coexist with demons, but if one of their own, you know, their leader, their friend, their big sister, Emma, is a demon herself, and a very kind one at that doesn't have to eat humans to live, maybe that would change their mind, and maybe that would change their perception. But I'm actually going to end the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.